There comes a silent moment in every man's life when he realizes that most of his suffering did not come from fate, nor enemies, nor poverty, but from caring too much about things that never deserve his soul in the first place. Caring too much is a disease disguised as virtue. You were taught that caring deeply makes you noble, compassionate, human. But Machiavelli would argue otherwise. He would say that excessive care is not nobility. It is vulnerability waiting to be exploited. The more you care about approval, the easier you are to control. The more you care about love, the easier you are to manipulate. The more you care about reputation, the easier you are to silence. And the tragedy is, most people never realize this. They live and die prisoners of invisible strings, pulled by society, family, lovers, and fear. Machiavelli observed men not as they pretend to be, but as they truly are beneath the mask. He saw that people respect indifference more than devotion. They fear emotional detachment more than emotional intensity. Because when you care less, you become unpredictable. And unpredictability is power. Look closely at the world around you. The man who begs for attention is ignored. The man who is comfortable alone is pursued. The one who fears losing people loses himself. The one who accepts loss becomes unshakable. This is the paradox Machiavelli understood centuries ago. Attachment weakens leverage. When you desperately want something, you surrender power over it. A king who fears rebellion rules poorly. A lover who fears abandonment loves desperately. A man who fears judgment lives dishonestly. Fear always exposes where you care too much. And wherever you care too much, you can be controlled. Life becomes heavy not because it is hard, but because you carry emotional weight that was never yours to hold. You worry about opinions that change like weather. You stress over people who would replace you in weeks. You exhaust yourself trying to be understood by minds committed to misunderstanding you. And slowly, you begin to disappear under the burden of unnecessary care. Machiavelli did not preach cruelty, he preached clarity. He understood that emotional economy is survival. Care selectively, detach strategically, invest feelings where there is return, not fantasy. Because the world does not reward emotional generosity, it exploits it. History proves this mercilessly. The rulers who ruled longest were not the most compassionate, but the most composed. They did not react emotionally to every insult. They did not lose sleep over betrayal. They did not crumble when loyalty shifted. They expected betrayal, therefore it never surprised them. And what does not surprise you cannot break you. This is where life begins to feel easier, not when problems vanish, but when emotional overreaction disappears. Imagine hearing criticism and feeling nothing. Imagine losing someone and maintaining inner balance. Imagine being misunderstood and remaining unmoved. That is freedom, not freedom from events, but freedom from emotional slavery to events. Most people live reactively. Their mood depends on messages. Their confidence depends on praise. Their peace depends on acceptance. They are not living, they are being operated. Machiavelli believed that emotional independence is the foundation of power. When you need nothing from people, you negotiate from strength. But when you need validation, loyalty, or approval, you negotiate from weakness. This is why the less you care, the easier life becomes. Because you stop negotiating your peace. You stop begging reality to be kinder. You stop pleading for fairness. You stop expecting loyalty from self-interested humans. You begin to see the world as it is, not as you wish it to be. And reality, once accepted, becomes easier to navigate. Painful illusions are heavier than painful truths. The illusion that people will always appreciate you. The illusion that loyalty is permanent. The illusion that effort guarantees reward. These illusions create emotional debt. When reality fails to honor them, you feel betrayed. But Machiavelli never felt betrayed by human nature because he studied it too well to romanticize it. He knew people act from interest first, morality second, and loyalty last. Once you accept this, disappointment reduces dramatically. You stop expecting permanent goodness from temporary emotions. You understand that affection fluctuates, respect shifts, alliances evolve. And suddenly, detachment feels logical, not cold. You are not heartless, you are perceptive. Caring less does not mean loving nothing. It means loving wisely. It means understanding that giving your emotional life away recklessly is not kindness. It is self-destruction. Think about how much suffering in your life came from over-attachment. Over-caring about someone's opinion. Over-caring about someone's presence. Over-caring about being chosen, valued, remembered. You place your emotional stability in external hands. And external hands are unstable by nature. People change when convenience changes. Machiavelli warned rulers about this repeatedly. Never rely on loyalty that has not been tested by self-interest. The same applies to personal life. If someone's presence defines your peace, their absence will define your suffering. But when you build emotional independence, absence loses its terror. You no longer cling. You observe. You no longer chase. You attract or you walk. Indifference is not emptiness. It is emotional self-sufficiency. And self-sufficiency is magnetic. People sense when you do not need them. It unsettles them. Because most human interaction is built on mutual dependency. Emotional bargaining disguised as connection. I give you attention. You give me validation. I give you loyalty. You give me security. But when you break this silent contract, dynamics shift. You become respected, sometimes feared, often misunderstood, but rarely controlled. Machiavelli knew that fear, when balanced, protects more reliably than affection. Because affection is voluntary, fear is precautionary. Translate this psychologically. When people know you can walk away without emotional collapse, they treat you differently. Not warmer, but more carefully. And careful treatment reduces chaos in your life. You experience less manipulation, fewer emotional games, fewer disrespectful tests. Because predators hunt emotional desperation, not emotional composure. The less you signal need, the less you attract exploitation. This is why emotionally detached individuals often live quieter, simpler lives. They're not dragged into every conflict. They're not wounded by every insult. They're not shattered by every departure. They conserve energy. And life, at its core, is energy management. Where attention goes, emotional cost follows. If you care about everything, everything drains you. If you care selectively, peace increases. Machiavelli mastered selective care. He cared about outcomes, not opinions. Stability, not approval. Control, not applause. He understood that public admiration is volatile. Today's hero becomes tomorrow's villain. So why anchor your emotional state to public perception? The crowd is historically inconsistent. They cheer victories, mock failures. Forget sacrifices. To care deeply about their judgment is to ride an emotional roller coaster controlled by strangers. Detachment frees you from this circus. You act according to strategy, not applause. And strategy simplifies life dramatically. Because emotional people complicate decisions. They hesitate where they should act. They forgive where they should withdraw. They trust where they should observe. Excess care clouds judgment. Indifference clarifies it. When you're not emotionally entangled, you see motives cleaner. You recognize manipulation faster. You detect insincerity earlier. You exit toxic dynamics sooner. This prevents prolonged suffering. Many of life's hardest chapters lasted longer than necessary because you cared beyond reason. You stayed loyal to disloyal people. You stayed invested in fading connections. You stayed emotionally available to those emotionally absent. Not because you were blind, but because you cared too much to accept what you saw. Detachment is acceptance without resistance. It is the strength to say, I see reality and I adjust. No denial, no begging, no emotional bargaining. And that adjustment reduces friction. Life becomes smoother not because people become kinder, but because you become less entangled in their chaos. Machiavelli would argue that emotional distance is armor, not to isolate you from love, but to shield you from unnecessary wounds. A ruler who reacts emotionally to every insult destabilizes his throne. A man who reacts emotionally to every slight destabilizes his peace. Composure is authority over self, and self-authority precedes authority over life. When you care less about provocations, provocateurs lose power. When you care less about gossip, gossipers lose leverage. When you care less about rejection, rejectors lose intimidation. Indifference dissolves many invisible chains. You stop performing for acceptance. You stop explaining yourself endlessly. You stop proving your worth to those committed to undervaluing it. You can serve dignity, and dignity simplifies existence, because humiliation often comes from over-seeking validation. The man who does not seek applause cannot be humiliated by silence. The man who does not seek approval cannot be wounded by disapproval. The man who does not fear loss cannot be threatened with it. This is psychological invincibility, not arrogance, but emotional minimalism. You reduce dependency, therefore reduce vulnerability. Machiavelli's philosophy was never about becoming emotionless. It was about becoming emotionally disciplined. There's a difference. Emotionless men are empty. Disciplined men are controlled. One is numbness, the other is mastery. Caring less does not mean you feel nothing. It means feelings do not rule decisions. You may feel disappointment, but you do not collapse. You may feel anger, but you do not self-destruct. You may feel loss, but you do not lose identity. You experience emotion without surrendering authority to it, and that balance creates resilience. Resilient people experience pain, but recover quickly, because their emotional investments are diversified, not concentrated in fragile places. They do not place their entire happiness in one person, one outcome, one perception. They spread emotional risk. This is psychological strategy, something Machiavelli would deeply respect. He believed security comes from anticipating instability. Apply this internally. Expect people to change. Expect loyalty to fluctuate. Expect admiration to fade, not pessimistically, but realistically. When change arrives, you remain steady, and steadiness makes life easier to carry. Most suffering comes not from events, but from shock. You did not suffer only because someone left, but because you never imagined they would. Expectation amplified pain. Detachment moderates expectation. You appreciate presence, but prepare for absence. You value loyalty, but do not depend on it blindly. You love, but you remain whole without reciprocation. This is emotional sovereignty, and sovereign individuals move through life lighter. They do not drag emotional chains behind them. They travel psychologically unburdened. No resentment stakpos, no obsessive gradius, no endless need for closure. They accept, learn, and continue, because caring less about explanations frees you from mental imprisonment. Not every betrayal requires analysis. Not every departure requires understanding. Sometimes clarity lies in accepting they chose differently and moving forward without autopsy. Machiavelli respected forward motion more than emotional rumination, because rumination weakens decisiveness. A ruler obsessed with past betrayals fails to prepare for future threats. Likewise, a man obsessed with emotional wounds fails to build future strength. Indifference accelerates recovery. You heal faster when you do not cling to the knife that cut you. You release, and therefore you regenerate. This is why emotionally detached individuals often appear calm, even in chaos. It is not that their lives lack storms, but that they do not internalize every thunderstrike. They let events pass through, not settle within. And so, life feels easier. Not lighter in circumstance, but lighter in psychological weight. Because weight is not measured only in problems, but in attachment to problems. Two men can face identical hardships. One collapses, the other remains composed. The difference is not strength of fate, but strength of detachment. The first asks, "Why is this happening to me?" The second asks, what is the strategic response? Emotion versus calculation. Reaction versus navigation. Machiavelli always favored navigation. He believed life is less about fairness, more about positioning, and caring less improves positioning. You do not waste time proving innocence to those invested in your guilt. You do not waste energy convincing the committed skeptic. You do not sacrifice peace trying to win unwinnable perceptions. You redirect focus toward controllables. And controllables are where power lives. Your decisions, your reactions, your investments of care. Everything else is external theater. Most people exhaust themselves trying to control audience reactions instead of their own performance. Machiavelli would call this strategic foolishness. Care about execution, not applause. Because applause is noise, execution is leverage. And leverage simplifies life's complexity. The less emotionally distracted you are, the clearer you think. The clearer you think, the fewer mistakes you make. The fewer mistakes, the fewer crises you create. Thus, caring less indirectly reduces chaos. Emotional impulsivity is responsible for countless life complications. Angry messages sent too soon. Relationships destroyed by insecurity. Opportunities lost due to fear of judgment. All symptoms of excessive care. When you detach, you pause. When you pause, you assess. When you assess, you act intelligently. This transforms life from reactive to strategic. And strategy is smoother than reactivity. Machiavelli survived political volatility not through moral perfection, but emotional calculation. He did not let outrage dictate policy. He did not let sentiment override stability. He understood that ruling others first requires ruling oneself. Self-rule begins with emotional restraint. And emotional restraint begins where overcare ends. The less you need the world to behave a certain way, the easier it is to live in it. Acceptance reduces friction more than resistance ever could. You stop arguing with human nature. You stop expecting permanent fairness. You stop demanding loyalty contracts from temporary people. You move with reality, not against it. And moving with reality requires less force, less frustration, less suffering. This is the hidden liberation in caring less. It is not apathy. It is alignment. Alignment with truth rather than illusion. You stop saying, people shouldn't be like this, and start saying, people are like this. How do I move wisely within it? That shift alone eliminates enormous emotional strain, because you're no longer shocked by predictable human flaws. You anticipate them. Preparation replaces disappointment, and preparedness feels calmer than hope. Hope tied to people is fragile. Preparedness tied to self is stable. Machiavelli trusted preparedness. He built systems assuming loyalty would fail. Likewise, emotional strength comes from assuming attachments may shift, not to avoid love, but to avoid collapse if love transforms. You remain capable of connection, but immune to emotional ruin. And immunity creates peace. Peace makes life feel easier, not because the world softened, but because your inner resistance dissolved. You no longer fight every outcome. You adapt. Adaptation is lighter than resistance. Water flows around obstacles, stone shatters against them. Caring less turns you from stone into water. Flexible, observant, unbreakable through movement. And movement is survival. Because stagnation often comes from emotional fixation. You remain stuck on people who left, moments that ended, respect that faded. Detachment releases stagnation. You flow forward again. And forward movement reduces suffering more than nostalgia ever will. Machiavelli understood that survival belongs to the adaptable, not the sentimental. Sentimentality clouds necessary decisions. You keep allies who endanger you because you care. You tolerate disrespect because you care. You delay exits because you care. And delay compounds damage. Indifference accelerates necessary endings. You cut losses early. You withdraw sooner. You preserve dignity before erosion deepens. This makes life cleaner. Fewer prolonged conflicts, fewer emotional entanglements, fewer drawn-out betrayals. Clean exits create cleaner minds, and clean minds experience lighter lives. Because mental clutter weighs heavier than physical hardship. Overthinking conversations, replaying disrespect, imagining alternative outcomes, all products of excessive care. When you care less, mental noise decreases, silence increases, and inner silence is peace. Peace makes even difficult lives feel manageable, while inner chaos makes even comfortable lives feel unbearable. So the equation is not circumstance, but psychological load. Reduce attachment, reduce load. Reduce load, increase ease. This is the Machiavellian liberation few dare to practice, but all would benefit from understanding. Because in the end, the less you care about what cannot be controlled, the more energy you have to master what can. And mastery, not approval, is what makes life feel truly easier.